So I was just thinking about this the other day. Why does everyone think interior designers just pick out pretty pillows? I get it. Before I started in this world, I honestly thought the same thing. Coming from my accounting background, I figured designers were basically professional shoppers with good taste, right? But here's what I discovered after building my own interior design business in my 40s and working alongside decorators and architects. These are three completely different careers that somehow got mushed together in people's minds. And the confusion isn't just annoying, it's actually keeping people from pursuing the path that might be perfect for them. Because when you don't understand what each role actually does, how can you figure out where you fit? I had clients ask me to move load-bearing walls, thinking that's what interior designers do. I've had people assume I can't help with space planning because they think I'm just a decorator. Let's clear this up once and for all, shall we? So let's start with decorators because this role is probably the one that people think of most when they hear interior design. Decorators are basically the styling experts. They're the ones who come in and make everything look beautiful. Choosing furniture, picking out art, coordinating colors, and arranging accessories. Think of it like this. If your room was a person, a decorator is doing the hair and makeup. They're making it photo shoot ready. Now, here's what's interesting about decorating. You can literally start tomorrow if you want. There's no licensing, no specific education requirements. If you have an eye for style and you're good at shopping, you could call yourself a decorator. No license, no special skills required. And this is important. Decorators typically can't touch anything structural. They're not moving walls. They're not changing electrical. They're not doing space planning. They work within the existing layout and elements of the space. So when a decorator walks into a room, they're asking, how do I make this space beautiful? They might rearrange furniture, add a gallery wall, bring in some plants, switch up the lighting fixtures. Thing is, decorating is more about the surface level transformation, which is not a bad thing, by the way. Sometimes that's exactly what a space needs, but it's also why the scope is more limited compared to other paths. For interior architects, this is where things get serious. If decorators are doing the hair and makeup, architects are basically crafting the entire person from the bones up. They're dealing with the structure, engineering, building codes, safety regulations, the whole foundation of how a building works. So, when an architect approaches a project, they're thinking things like, how does this building relate to the site? What are the zoning restrictions? How do we handle the structural loads? They're solving problems from the outside in. Now, here's the reality check about becoming an architect. We're talking about some serious commitment, like 7 to 10 years of education serious. You need a professional degree, then you need to complete internships, then you need to pass these intensive licensing exams. It's basically like becoming a doctor, but for buildings. And even after all that, architects don't often get super involved in picking out your kitchen countertops or choosing paint colors. That's usually handed off to, well, someone else. Don't get me wrong, architects do incredible work. They're solving complex problems, making sure buildings don't fall down, creating spaces that can handle thousands of people safely, and many, many more. But the day-to-day reality, a lot of technical drawings, code compliance, structural calculations, which is wonderful if building things is what you love. And this brings us to the third option. Interior designers. Interior designers are kind of like a bridge between these two worlds. And honestly, this is the role that so many people don't fully understand. So, while decorators are focused on making things pretty, and architects are solving structural problems, interior designers are asking a completely different question. How do people actually live and work in this space? Interior designers are the ones doing space planning, figuring out how to arrange rooms so they actually function for real life. They're thinking about traffic flow, storage needs, lighting design, furniture layout that makes sense. But here's where it gets really interesting to me, and this is what I wish someone had told me earlier. Interior designers work from the inside out, not the outside in like architects do. What I mean is we start with the people. We're sitting down with the clients asking, how do you actually use your kitchen? Where do you like to read? What drives you crazy about your current setup? How do you like to feel when you're here. Then we translate that into actual design solutions. Maybe that means knocking down a wall between the kitchen and the dining room so a busy mom can watch her kids while she's cooking, or creating a dedicated workspace that actually fits how someone runs their business from home, or choose a specific kind of color and place furniture in a way that promotes relaxation or focus. We're not just picking pretty things, we're problem solving. But we're also not dealing with the structural engineering that architects handle. And here's what nobody talks about. Interior designers can actually make changes to a space. Unlike decorators who work with what's there, we can move non-load bearing walls, redesign kitchens, reconfigure entire floor plans. But we're also not starting from scratch like architects are. We're working within an existing shell and making it work better for the people who live there, which is why interior design ends up being this perfect middle ground that worked for me. So let me give you a realistic example of how these three would approach the same project completely differently. Let's say a couple calls because their living room just isn't working. It's the main gathering space, but it feels awkward for both relaxing and entertaining, and they can't figure out the furniture arrangement. A decorator would come in and assess the existing space. They'd look at the furniture placement, the flow between seating areas, maybe suggest rearranging what's there, or swapping in pieces that better fit the scale. They're working within the current layout to make it beautiful and more appealing so it eases the mind. An architect probably wouldn't take this project at all, if not really in their wheelhouse, unless there were structural changes needed. But if they did, they would be thinking about things like, how does this room connect to the rest of the house? Are there any structural elements we could modify? They would go above and beyond to make sure our little couple live in a functional and beautiful space, even if it means rearranging from the ground up. An interior designer would start by asking, how do you actually use this room? Do you host dinner parties, movie nights? Do kids play here? Then we'd look at the space planning. Maybe the furniture arrangement is wrong, or maybe we need to think about built-ins for storage, or lighting that works for different activities. The decorator is optimizing what's already there. The architect is thinking about the bigger structural picture. The interior designer is reimagining how the space could work better for this specific family's lifestyle. And here's the day-to-day reality. Decorators spend time sourcing beautiful pieces and creating a cohesive look. Architects are deep in technical drawings and building regulations. Interior designers, we're doing space planning, managing projects from concept to completion, coordinating between different trades, solving problems that come up during renovations. It's this mix of creative problem solving and project management that honestly keeps things really interesting, which is exactly why interior design ends up being this sweet spot. That being said, I know a lot of interior architects that do the role of an interior designer, but an interior designer won't be able to replace an architect fully. And it works for the decorators as well. A designer can play the role of a decorator, but a decorator can't do what a designer does. To me, here's why I think interior design is actually the Goldilocks option. It's not too little impact like decorating can sometimes be, and it's not the massive commitment that architecture sometimes requires. As a decorator, you're making spaces beautiful, but you're pretty limited in what you can actually change. You're working with the existing layout, and sometimes that layout is just wrong for how people live. As an architect, you can change everything, but you're also dealing with years of education, licensing exams, and honestly, a lot of your day is spent on technical stuff that has nothing to do with helping families love their homes. But interior design, you get the best of both worlds. You're actually solving real problems for people. I had a client who was basically living in her dining room because her living room furniture arrangement made absolutely no sense. We didn't just restyle it, we completely refigured the space so that it actually worked for how she entertained. You get to be creative, but you're also being strategic. You're not just picking pretty things. You're thinking, okay, this family has 3 kids and 2 dogs. How do we make this beautiful and functional? And here's what I love about it. You see immediate impact. When you hand over keys to a family and they walk into their newly designed space and you see their faces light up, that's not just about pretty pillows. That's about creating a home that actually supports how they want to live. Plus, let's be real about the practical stuff. You don't need 7 years of school. You don't even need to pass licensing exams. But you're also not limited to just moving accessories around. You could actually transform spaces, remove walls, redesign layouts, create storage solutions, plan lighting that makes sense. You're making real changes that impact people's daily lives. It's like you get to be part therapist, part artist, part project manager, part problem solver. Isn't that beautiful? Which is probably why so many people are drawn to design, but they get confused about which path to take, I guess. So, how do you figure out which path actually fits you? Well, think about what got you excited as I was explaining these 3 roles. When I talked about decorators, styling, and sourcing beautiful pieces, did that light you up? If you love shopping, have a great eye for putting looks together, and you're drawn to the aesthetic side of design, decorating might be your thing. When I mentioned architectures solving complex structural problems, were you intrigued? If you love technical challenges, don't mind years of education, and you're fascinated by how buildings work from the ground up, architecture could be calling your name. But if you found yourself nodding when I talked about interior design, the real problem solving, the client relationships, making spaces work better for real life, that might be your sweet spot. Here's what I've noticed. People drawn to interior design usually love the idea of helping others, but they also want to be creative. They want to make a real impact, but they don't want to spend a decade in school first. They're the ones who walk into someone's home and immediately start mentally rearranging things, not just to make it prettier, but to make it work better. Does that sound anything like you? The thing is, most people never even consider interior design because they think it's the same as decorating, or they assume that they need some fancy degree. Now you know better. These are 3 totally different paths with different requirements, different daily realities, and different impacts you can make. Understanding these differences was a game changer for me when I was figuring out my own direction. If you're someone who's been drawn to design but wasn't sure which direction to go, I broke down exactly what I actually do as an interior designer in this video. Go and watch that if you're curious about this path. And make sure to subscribe because I'm doing a whole series on how to become an interior designer without going through the traditional path. I can't wait to see what you'll create. Until next time, take care.